The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Josh Agala from thestandard.io.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor.
Greetings, folks.
Ben Ark from LN Bits.
Good evening.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue one. Issue one, Coinbase launches layer 2 blockchain Base to provide on-ramp for Ethereum, Solana, and others. Coinbase has built a new second layer for scaling and other D apps or distributed apps built on top of Optimism and with no plans to issue a network token. Many have seen this as positive for Ethereum and other altcoins and surprising for Coinbase, who used to be Bitcoin only. Josh Agala, what do you think about Coinbase's latest offering, Base, that will allow you to do layer 2 dApps on Coinbase?
Yeah, I don't know what to think about it. I mean, first of all, it's a bit weird that the centralized unit is building a so-called decentralized thing. It's also weird that it's called Base when it's layer 2. I mean, maybe Base sounds like layer 1, but also, yeah, what I've, Binance has got Binance Smart Chain and people use it and they say it's decentralized because they've got all these validators that are out there and Binance doesn't have control of them. Maybe Coinbase will do that as well. I don't know what the security mechanism is of it, but the thing is with Optimism is it's just, for me, it's a stopgap in the scaling solution for Ethereum. It's not really a good scaling solution because you have to wait like 7 days for those that don't know how optimistic rollup works. Basically, it assumes that it's that everyone's a good actor, which is first of all a weird thing to do. But if there's a bad actor that lets a bad transaction through as one of the validators, then you've got 7 days, or the whole community's got 7 days to basically say, that was that wasn't a good transaction, and then that validator gets their deposit slashed for not doing a right thing. So, but that means every time you want to bring funds back to the base layer, you have to wait 7 days. So it's really a terrible scaling solution. It's not fast. It's horrible. Whereas some of the zero knowledge proof stuff that's coming out is instant. And on Ethereum, you can talk to layer 2, like a smart contract on layer 1 can actually talk to layer 2 because it's so real time. Plus, you got the privacy stuff. So I just think it's weird that Coinbase chose to use optimistic rollup technology for their so-called base when they could have been running, should have been research and developing zero knowledge proof stuff, which is just far better.
I just feel bad for Coinbase at this point. Josh mentioned Binance Smart Chain, which of course has its own token. The whole point of doing these things seems to be having your own token that you can sell at a low price, and then it goes to a high price, and then you can dump it on people. Or you get funds and fees every time people use your smart token. I'm sure they're going to charge fees on this and they'll make money somehow, but it just seems like they're always playing catch up. They're always playing follow the leader. And although they tried to make this a big announcement on 2/23/23, it didn't really take off that much. And I don't know if it's going to work. I also wonder about running distributed apps on a centralized service like Coinbase. Is Coinbase now responsible for every transaction that goes through? If you're running a drug website through this layer 2, is Coinbase now running a drug website through this layer 2? In the articles, they said that they will gradually and responsibly make it distributed. I don't know what that means, so we'll have to see. Dan Ark, more on Coinbase layer 2. Dan Eve, sorry.
Well, I got well. I thought Dan Ark's actually a really cool name. Now I'm going to go and change it by default.
You'll be like the libertarians. Everyone's name will be Freeman all of a sudden.
yeah. So, well, I think it's very self-confident of Coinbase, right? Because they're constantly having these regulatory battles, being kind of the biggest US exchange. So for them to go and do something like this is actually quite ballsy, right? It's they're not creating their own token, but as you pointed out, like what happens with when an app does something nefarious, right? Do they, they're going to be, are they responsible for that? At what point is the tipping point of decentralization where they wouldn't be responsible for it? There's kind of lots of questions I think that need to be answered from a regulatory standpoint, because I think they're going to get a lot more breathing down their neck right now. And this is, using Ethereum. I mean, OP sounds quite, optimistic rollup sound quite cool. Not as cool as Josh put it out as zero knowledge proofs. And there's also ZK rollups as well. There's a few projects doing ZK rollups. But why, if you're using Ethereum and you're saying, right, we're using Ethereum because of security, then why not use Bitcoin for the security? Why not have like a federated sidechain on Bitcoin, which is much more secure? Maybe it's because they have the same, I don't know, pressure from their investors about being like, green, environmentally friendly, and now the shift to Ethereum's proof of stake means that Coinbase can be a zero carbon kind of company, whereas if they did it on Bitcoin, there would still be people moaning about boiling whales and whatever else nonsense, but they're not gaining the best security of the most secure network. But ultimately, it seems like something that's quite risky for them. The fact that they are under the SEC's nose all the time, but maybe not having a token will help them come out unscathed. But I can definitely see the censorship thing being a problem in terms of DApps. Why would you want to run a DApp on the Coinbase base if it could be censored? Why wouldn't you run it on an actual decentralized platform?
Well, I agree, Dan. It almost seems like Coinbase is, trying to get the regulators to come down on them. They're like, Earn isn't illegal enough. Try out our layer 2 DApps. And remember that the United States,
Daddy.
yeah, they're going to get it. And remember that the United States said that all the Ethereum staking, or 70, 80% of it, took place in the US. Therefore, the US owned and could regulate that network. The obvious question is, where is this Coinbase base staking, mining, whatever it's going to be called these days? Where does it exist? And will the US directly regulate it? And remember that during the SegWit and the scaling wars, Coinbase was exclusively supporting anti-SegWit larger blocks. Then they wanted Bitcoin 2x with larger blocks. They never liked the Lightning Network. They still don't have it on their platform, which is amazing and disgusting. And just seems like they're kind of throwing another pie in Bitcoin's face here. And I just wonder if we look at this at the end of the day and they don't make it, even though they're on the stock market, even though they had all these advantages and Y Combinator and whatever, will it be because they walked away from Bitcoin? Ben Ark, what do you think about Coinbase's base?
I mean, I guess it's for control, right? I mean, which is why they probably don't like Bitcoin, because they couldn't control it when historically they tried to, enact some control. I'm not saying that anyone who wanted bigger blocks wanted control. I mean, I wanted bigger blocks at the time. I didn't want control of Bitcoin, but to then turn away from Bitcoin because they didn't get their way means that they were, had their nose powder drunk because they didn't think they could control the thing. So that as a business, like, what's the incentive? They need this thing to exist to make their business model work better. Like, why are they investing in this thing? Like, they need this thing to exist to make their business model work better, right? That's one possible reason. And then the other possible reason is they just want control, or to be able to enact control. And I suppose there's a third reason as well. We should always assume that these big, huge entities in our space have been coerced by whatever government they reside in, particularly at a time now where all this stuff's coming to the surface more and more. And these governments are going to try and enact some control. So we have to be very careful, like, people have to be very careful which platforms they trust. And personally, I'm not going to trust some blockchain layer 2, which is being created by a big company like Coinbase. It's just it sounds like an intranet to me, like a Rube Goldberg machine, because for whatever reason what they're trying to do doesn't work, or they just want more control, and both those reasons are bad. I agree with Josh, like the ZK stuff's the way, but it's a little bit more complicated and wouldn't be something which they could control. So why would they promote such a thing?
According to the articles that I've read, the reason that you would build your distributed app on Coinbase is to get access to their millions of users and their hundreds of millions of dollars. So it almost seems like, once again, with the altcoins, we're going to be selling these to people without information, people that are on your platform already. And like we've seen in the past with Coinbase, they designed that education platform where you can learn about the Ponzi scheme before you invest in it. And it just seems like they're going to be taking their users through the car wash here. It's like, will they survive? And it's this beautiful, like sushi little thing where it moves, conveyor belt, where it's going to move the little things by, and you're like, Bitcoin Cash, Coinbase, Base, Ethereum, all these things keep scrolling by, and it's like, who cannot buy these things and hold their Bitcoin? That's the challenge. And it seems like it's getting harder and harder for Coinbase users to survive that challenge.
I think Ben Arks really touched on something very interesting there, as well as everyone here on the panel, actually. But I am always suspicious of the government where a major company resides, a major company, because it's just outright fact that whatever you want to call it, I hate the term deep state because it's been co-opted, but basically all the FBIs and the CIAs, the dark side of the state, they want to make sure that if these financial products are a threat to national security, then what you want to do is make sure that you control that threat. And so how do you do that? Well, liquidity goes where liquidity is. So if you can have the layer 2 with the most liquidity, and this is one of the big problems of the layer 2 competition landscape, is that every new layer 2 that pops up, the liquidity gets spread between all the different layer 2s. So and this is not good, especially for something like DEXs. If you want to make a large transaction without slippage on an automated market maker, you've got to go to the layer 2 with the most liquidity so that it doesn't happen. So you'll go there and add your liquidity to that area. So more and more people will congregate around that layer 2, similar to how Betamax and VHS, VHS won out because they had, well, the liquidity of the cassette tapes, of more of those tapes around. So if you have the liquidity, then people will go to Base, which is then owned by America, as well, an American company, an American state, and controlled by that functionality and infrastructure. So I think that could be one of the reasons. It could just be, hey, some techies get an hour a week to build their own stuff. Some of them came up with this and they're like, oh cool, let's release it. But I don't think so. I think anything that gets full release and press releases like this has been thought out, and it fits into some sort of plan. It's not just, oh, let's just roll something out for the lols.
Well, one good thing about this is that at least Coinbase is a relatively trusted company. According to what we've heard about FTX, they put all of their customers into the investing, lending, Alameda, whatever it was. Coinbase could do the same thing here, converting all of their customers' funds into Base liquidity, but I believe we can trust them and they won't do that. So at least that's one plus.
Yeah.
Any more on this issue? Moving on to the exit question. Predict against the Bitcoin predictor ball, the baldest and truest source of all Bitcoin wisdom, who last week denied you of its wisdom. Josh Shigala, will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower next week?
I think we're kind of moved sideways for a little bit. So I'm going to sit on the fence.
Sideways, a push. Dan, Eve, higher or lower?
Well, I'm going to go higher. And as a great contra trader, that means that I'm going to hopefully be able to buy some cheaper Bitcoin next week when it's cheaper, because I got it wrong again.
I don't think it works if you predict against yourself while you're predicting against yourself, but we can try that reverse psychology here. Ben Ark, higher or lower?
I'm probably going to go higher, but I got this. Oh, I'm not going to go into it. It'll be my story of the week. But yeah, higher.
Higher. Ben is picking higher. Here we are with the ball. Shaking it may cause bubbles. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? Cannot predict now. The ball is withholding once again. That's the way it goes. Sometimes there's just not an answer. Issue 2. Bulgarian investigators claim Cryptoqueen was murdered in 2018. Ruja Ignatova, who founded OneCoin and helped promote it on stage across the world, is allegedly at the bottom of the Ionian Sea, being killed and murdered on a drug dealer's yacht, cut up into pieces and thrown overboard. Bonus, this was probably predicted by Martine Wishmayer on our shows, who said, yep, she's dead. We've talked about OneCoin before. Remember, OneCoin was promoted like a multi-level marketing scam. They rented hotel rooms and conference centers. They went around and they talked to non-Bitcoin people. They told them they had a better Bitcoin. They told them that they would double their coins by November. And as Chris DeRose and Junseth so bravely reported with hidden cameras and microphones, the guy said, I know it in my knower that OneCoin is going to the moon. Dan Eve, she promised she would double your coins. Allegedly, she and the scam itself stole as much as $5 billion. Is this the end of OneCoin?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if people still tried to buy it now, to be honest. Like, there's so many people that would want to catch a falling knife. But it kind of sounds quite logical. I mean, she really did disappear sort of, off the face of the earth. And you would have thought one side there's the fact that she had potentially billions behind her, so she could change her face, change her name, and go completely, completely incognito after that. And the other side, obviously, that they're saying that she was, killed by a drug dealer and thrown off the boat. Maybe he didn't have his coins doubled and realized that he should have just bought Bitcoin and was a bit pissed off about that. But some people say it's just fake news to throw them off the scent. But this isn't something that's just kind of come out of the blue. It was as a result of like a policeman dying last year or being killed, and then the papers that he had statements that he had showing that apparently saying that she was thrown off. So and also you'd think that the FBI would be a bit more well researched on the matter if that was the case, because they only just put her on the wanted list a few years ago. So 4 years or something after 3-4 years after she actually went missing. But recently as well, I think it was this year that her ex-boyfriend was sentenced to 5 years for money laundering. So there's people around her that are kind of going down. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm kind of with Martine. I think that she probably rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way. I mean, when you scam that many people, then you're going to have targets on your head. You're going to have crosshairs on your head, and if it's kind of if you've ripped off big drug dealers who have got giant yachts, then you're going to end up literally swimming with the fishes. As they're saying, she was kind of dismembered and all sorts of gruesome stories about it. But unfortunately, that's what happens when you scam people. Well, not everyone gets that fate, of course, but when you do it to that scale, maybe not Sam Bankman-Fried, I don't know. But not saying I want that to happen in any way, but he's obviously pissed off probably quite a lot of people as well. So imagine if he ends up at sharing a cell with a dude that committed crimes because he lost a bunch of money in FTX. I don't know. It's 2023. Any story can go right now, but sadly, a lot of people must have lost a lot of money. And as you said, they did this thing where they they had these huge, halls out, like convention centers, and they would do these big kind of elaborate presentations and things. And it was like, when you watch those videos, they're really cringy. Like I when I came out of uni, I went for a few kind of jobs that promised the earth, and was duped into going to them, and they turned out to be literally like door to door sales jobs. But like the sort of like, selling electric or whatever. And it was all about basically, the under thing was like, well, your best bet is to catch an oldie who doesn't really know what they're doing and sign up. And like, I don't want to be a part of this. This is terrible. But the things they were saying, like the guy, like when I was doing this thing, he was driving around in like the 20-year-old car. It's literally a heap of crap. And he's like, if I just do this for a few more weeks, I'm going to be like Timmy with his like Shark Tank, in his office, blah, blah, blah. But when you watch these like OneCoin presentations, like it's all the same kind of deluded sense of like, exponential wealth growth. It's like it's very sad, because people want to make a lot of money, and they want to make it quick. And when you've got someone who's offering something like this, it's easy to latch onto, especially if you haven't been burned before in a small way. So yeah, unfortunately, she's probably rubbed up a lot of people the wrong way, and it wouldn't surprise me if she disappeared via the old route.
Well, I'm not so sure it was an investor. I think it's a little romantic that Igna, Tova, and SBF could both be taken out by rogue investors. It seems more to me like she might have been the front woman of this scam, and that someone else put the money in. Someone else rented all the hotel conference centers. Someone else made the presentation. Someone else bought the handlers, sent out the things, bought the mailing lists, wherever they got these people. And then at the end of the day, that person followed the first rule of assassination: kill the assassin. Ben Ark, what do you think about OneCoin? She'll double your coins by November.
I mean, the whole OneCoin scam was absolutely horrific, and it duped a lot of people. And it was all off. What was annoying, it's all that stuff, all the ICO scams which were around at that time, and this OneCoin scam, which wasn't even an ICO scam, it was just like a fake website exchange scam where people would put like 25k, 50k buy-ins. And they weren't just vulnerable people. A lot of these people were like from the city of London, and they heard about Bitcoin, and they're like, this next thing's going to be the next Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah. And there's this female Satoshi. And then that's why they were buying into it, because they thought they could do as well as they would do of something like Bitcoin. So all these people inevitably are piggybacking off all the good work of all these Bitcoiners and all these people developing this incredibly revolutionary software. And then these scammers capitalize it. But I agree with you, Thomas, that we shouldn't be too quick to judge. Like, like she sucked for running a scam, right? But if she's been killed by this mafia, I mean, during that time when all this ICO stuff was going on, I remember there being lots of clear like mafias involved in scamming people. There were some coins and tokens which were released, and some videos which were released, and they were clearly like connected, And if I personally was like a criminal mastermind mafia boss, and was Bulgarian mafia boss, I would find a fairly smart, intelligent woman, which she was. I would kidnap her family. I would threaten to kill them, and I would say, right, you're now going to be the front face of this scam, and you're going to tell people, about the scam, blah, blah, blah. You're going to convince them it's a good idea to buy in, and they'll buy in, and I'm going to kill you. That's very plausible. That stuff like that happens, within the criminal world. And I think it's just another classic example of, when you have shady business, like, and you have big money involved, like people die. Like happens with drug stuff all the time. Like lots of people die because they're outside. They're in the Wild West. They're outside of the normal rule base which people live by. But yeah, if she is dead, it's sad, and if she isn't dead and she's an actual scammer, then screw her. She's horrible. But I can't help feeling that there's possibly she was just a puppet. So I don't want to judge her too much. But yeah, thankfully the world's a little bit wiser, and people are less likely to be able to profit off all the good work that Bitcoin does. Because there's these examples, and yeah, sadly those examples come with a lot of tragedy. But there we are.
Yes, I don't have any evidence that Satoshi was a woman or a man, but I do know that Dr. Ruja Ignatova, CEO of OneCoin, was indeed a woman. Girl power. Girls can do anything. Josh Shigala, what do you think about OneCoin and the disappearance of the CEO?
Well, first of all, it was only like it was 30th of January. I read a story about Decrypt actually, that they found her because she had an apartment in London. And so I don't know what to believe anymore. But anyway,
I think that was a whole
look,
company. Yeah, I think that wasn't actually. So it's because that's mentioned in the article. I think that was kind of like debunked as proof that she exists.
Oh, I see.
It seems like it could have been someone using her name or her bank accounts. And at the time, I think we reported on it. We said, "Oh, she's alive," but maybe just her bank accounts or her signature was alive.
I see. Yeah, I mean, look, she's obviously a fall guy. You cannot have such a big outfit. She'd be busier than a one-legged man in a butt kicking contest if she, had to run everything by herself. So there's other people that took part in this, and so it's really it's about finding the whole outfit. I mean, it's really awful. I remember I even had an open sourced letter that I was trying to get together using GitHub to try and bring this OneCoin down, because everywhere I went, in terms of little meetups and things, there'd be some new kids that have never heard anything about cryptocurrency going, "Oh, have you heard about this OneCoin thing?" and trying to shill it. It was just everywhere all the time. And I remember just being really pissed off at it all. But yeah, look, it definitely wouldn't surprise me if she's at the bottom of the sea. But at the same time, it's you just can't rip that many people off without ripping off someone. I'm really quite surprised that Sam Bankman-Fried hasn't been assassinated either, or even at the time, Mark Karpelès, I was surprised that he was untouched. So because people get really, really passionate, and you don't even need bad people. You just need someone that's really desperate because they've lost everything and angry and just wanting to get revenge. So it's yeah. But yeah, well, I hope they do find the other perpetrators and they keep on searching for these, because OneCoin was particularly egregious.
I agree, Josh. It's almost like a competition amongst bad people who can steal the most money before something happens. But we all know the one true route to getting assassinated is printing silver certificates. Yes, printing silver certificates. And as Ben was saying earlier, big money often leads to death. I wanted to remind everyone once again of what Ross Ulbricht did with the Silk Road. People were trading large amounts of cannabis for large amounts of money with no violence. This has never happened before in human history and is something laudable about that website. Moving on to the exit question, forced prediction. Is this the last we'll hear of Dr. Ruja? Is she dead? Dan Eve, yes or no?
I think she is. Yeah, I think she's gone now. We would have had a bit more news. I think it's been basically nothing since 2017 when she disappeared.
Ben, ARK, $5 billion gone. A movie book ending here.
I mean, yeah, if you're the outfit behind her, then she's like, what do you call it? A degree of separation which you can get rid of from you being put in jail. So yeah, she's dead.
Like Mr. Pink said in Reservoir Dogs, that's one more step closer to me, and that can't happen. Josh Shigala, is she dead?
Well, yeah, she probably is, and it means the outfit behind her, like Ben said, is in the clear, because that's the end of the story.
I'm the only one around here acting like a professional effing thief. A minute ago, you were about to tell me your name. I think she's dead too. I think this is the end of Dr. Ruja and OneCoin. I agree with Josh, though. It's sad that many of the foot soldiers were not caught. Many people perhaps were paid to promote this and were not punished and might have gotten to keep their ill-gotten gains. Moving on. Looking to stay up to date with the latest news and developments in the exciting world of cryptocurrencies? Look no further than the World Crypto Network. Our team of experts provides insightful analysis and engaging discussions on all things crypto related. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just getting started, our content is accessible, informative, and entertaining. So why wait? Join the World Crypto Network today and stay ahead of the curve in this rapidly evolving industry. Those words were entirely written by artificial intelligence. All I said was write a short advertisement for the World Crypto Network. Amazing, huh? Check out World Crypto Network at worldcryptonetwork.com. Subscribe today. Issue 3, FTX's collapse wiped out $200 billion in the total value of the cryptocurrency market, and it hit retail investors in emerging economies the hardest. Large investors tended to sell as the coins began to go down, whereas small investors in emerging economies like India and Thailand continued to buy as the prices declined. Ben Ark, what do you think about the main amount of losses on the Bitcoin and FTX scam coming from the emerging world and from retail investors?
I mean, this is clearly proof that the utility theory of value is a scam, because it's by these things being destroyed, it's added huge value onto Bitcoin, like hundreds of billions worth of value onto Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. It's good that FTX is gone. It's more valuable now because it's no longer muddying the waters, and we're better for it. So we've just got to wait for the price to catch up, the exchange value to catch up with it. But yeah, it's I don't see it like a loss of value. I see it as a massive gain in value, the fact that these things are gone.
I also think that none of these investors have lost if they haven't sold. If they wait, and if it does come back up, as many people believe, they'll be fine. But the article can't see that as a possibility. Josh Shigala, what do you think about the FTX investors being mostly retail and from the emerging markets?
Yeah, absolute tragedy. It's really sick, and this is why I'm such a big fan of I'm a big fan of decentralized finance, and I know everyone's going, ooh, but I like it because you're dealing with smart contracts where you still hold the keys. You don't have to trust other people. You have to trust the code because most people can't code, and you have to trust that you can't, you know, if they get too complex, it becomes harder to see even for a coder if there is a bug. But FTX or any centralized exchange where you're trusting the exchange, even with the proof of reserve stuff, you can't prove everything, and so by having decentralized finance and smart contracts dealing with it, you still hold the private keys in a good system, and we don't need all this stuff. You know, when we look back at it, these centralized financial products will be as useless as a chocolate teapot, like just pointless. It will melt, you know. So better to head towards DeFi, decentralized finance. And if you don't like any of that, then the original DeFi is Bitcoin.
Dan Eve, they say that FTX wiped out the little guy. What happened?
Well, it's really sad that you know, retail investors always get burned, right? And that's the sad thing, is that retail investors always seem to get burned because they're a bit less strategic, right? And they obviously don't have algorithms and quants and whatever helping them make these these trading decisions. So they tend to get, and they're also they're least likely to get the information before the kind of bigger entities do. So that's really sad. Then you're combining that with retail investors from emerging markets. So you know, people. I mean, hopefully these aren't people that they literally give their, it's their month's salary and year's salary or whatever, or the complete life savings. Because but the fact it's from emerging markets makes it sound even worse, right? Like, you wouldn't be so bad if it was like a bunch of Brits lost their funds due to it. But I think one thing is that's kind of positive in a way, because there's always always look on the bright side of life. So said in Monty Python's, is that every scam makes people realize that they should have just bought Bitcoin, because you can go chasing all these unicorn like projects that are just going to make you lots and lots of money and quickly, but you have such a high risk that the companies aren't going to go off with the funds, especially if they're kind of utility token type companies that just have clearly no intention of providing utility in the first place, and they've got no plan, no strategy. They just rely on the pump and dump schemes. So at least in that respect, every scam that happens, there are more people that want to turn to a safe haven, and Bitcoin is the safe haven, not just against the original, financial markets, but against the crypto scams. So that's pretty sad. The fact that the Market Insider, they focus on the fact that people lose lots of money on crypto and blah blah blah. But I worked in a bank or bank and finance company for a long while, and I knew lots of traders, and some of them were pretty intelligent like people, and they lost a lot of money on shares all the time. So you can criticize people or pick up on people losing money in crypto specifically from, say, Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin going down, and the Bank of International Settlements has been jumping on this and giving their quite rightly on the general scam of FTX, but also chiming in that Bitcoin, FTX going down means Bitcoin's also bad. But ultimately, people lose money on stocks. They lose money on trading forex. They lose money on lots of other things. So those things still happen. But it's because it's Bitcoin specifically, or at least it's a cryptocurrency company that held people's Bitcoin, that they have the chance to beat Bitcoin with a stick again. But as Josh was saying, the fact is that you even though you've got the proof of keys sort of thing going on, you can never trust a centralized entity. So best just to hold your own keys, like it's this thing, right? Whether there's going to be, there haven't actually been many repercussions, more in the last sort of month of other companies going down after the FTX downfall. Obviously there's Gemini and Gemini and what's the name having a spat as well. Gemini and
Genesis.
Digital currency group.
Yeah, and yeah, I think there's still more to come from the ripples. I think it's still a bit silent now. But sadly, I just feel for all the people that lost money in FTX and any other scam, OneCoin, and there's just so many of them. So you just need to keep your wits about you and stick to Bitcoin, really.
I think that goes well into the exit question. When Sam Bankman-Fried, the famous CEO from the pages of Forbes and Fortune magazine, learned that FTX had cost retail investors in the emerging world more than anyone else, how did he react? Was it like the Native American in the old garbage trash advertisement with the one tear dripping down his face? Josh Shigala, how would Sam Bankman-Fried, allegedly, of course, react to this sad news?
Oh, well, he'd say, I'm sorry, wouldn't he?
He'd probably do a bunch of Twitter spaces, yeah?
I'm sorry.
There you go. Do a bunch of
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
So sorry. Dan Eve, how would Sam react?
Yeah, I think he'd do a world tour of a world sorry tour, like the BP oil spill in South Park, with different outfits on, and stroking animals and kissing babies and being like, I'm so sorry, like the politicians doing all that, just trying to get his reputation back. But it's fooked because he seems like he's a giant, great big scammer. Seems like.
Ben Ark, how do you think these retail investors in emerging countries would react if SBF told them he's sorry?
I think he's doesn't quite shoulder the guilt, so it'd be, I'm sorry, but I was giving all these people an opportunity to join, and then he'll whine on about shit. He won't be a true sorry. I clearly didn't read the article properly, so I'm sorry for my response to it. I was like, fuck yeah, Bitcoin's worth more money now. It's very sad that these poor people lost their money, and it's in emerging markets. I agree with the rest of the panel.
Yeah, I agree with Ben. I think he would say he's sorry, but he doesn't really care. He would deflect. He'd say, oh, it was someone else's fault, or oh, it was CZ from Binance's fault, or oh, it was Caroline's fault. It was anybody but him. Moving on to issue 4. The San Francisco Federal Reserve is hiring for digital currency development. Like the New York-based counterpart, the office is looking for a CBDC developer, which is not a real thing. It sounds like the job application is for senior application architect digital currency. It sounds like the San Francisco Federal Reserve, as well as the New York Federal Reserve, have joined Russia and Iran and other countries working on a central bank digital currency. People have been talking about CBDCs for a while, and I've been kind of thinking they're wrong. But I guess we're at that stage, like Gandhi said, where they imitate you. They are now copying the evil, worthless Ponzi scheme Bitcoin and using it as the plans for their country's CBDC. Josh Shigala, what do you think about this strange development?
CBDCs are probably one of the most dangerous things for freedom, and people need to take it seriously that this is happening, that we need to have discussions. We cannot just sit back and say, oh, this is just happening. Like we shouldn't just say, oh, this is just the central banks are now doing this, because it will basically mean that the federal government has an atomic level of transparency into your own financial transactions. So a lot of people say, well, what's the difference between now? They can see stuff now. No, they can't. Your bank is obligated to keep your privacy. And at the end of the day, your bank has transferred a whole bunch of money to another bank from its customers, and the other bank has transferred a whole bunch of money to your bank throughout the day from their customers. And at the end of the day, it goes up to the Fed, and the Fed settles just one transaction from that bank to that bank. So the Fed don't know all the details of what happened in between. So if you remove that, if you allow the central bank to be instantly real-time down to the cent or down to the sub-cent, they can start to then say, well, control transactions. Oh, there is a lockdown now in your area, and you're moving past your lockdown at 15-minute city zone where you're not allowed to spend your money. Or where there's the obesity epidemic, you've already had your ration of sugar. Or well, we've got to stop global warming, and you've had already 2 grams of beef too much, your wallet won't work. Like whatever you think, it's only worse. And whatever your political leaning, it's only going to be worse. It's not something that should be done. There's no point. There's already real-time settlement. The real-time settlement, A, can be done in cryptocurrency that's decentralized, but B, can be done in Venmo and things like that. The private sector can deal with real-time settlement. It doesn't need it. This is just a farce to control money and to basically control its citizenry. It's awful. So we should stand up against it, or at least have a conversation.
Well, it's always trouble when I agree with Josh, but it does sound like a government's wet dream. During the Bush administration, they had a crackdown on pornography and other things that they didn't like, and they actually had to go there physically and do these kind of things. What they could do, presumably, with a CBDC is anytime you spend money at a bad business, they could shut down the bad business's account. They could shut down your account. There's all kinds of fun things that they could do. And it's not just like knowing how much is in your bank account. Like Josh says, it's knowing every single transaction on the ledger. Dan, Eve, what do you think about this exciting job opportunity in San Francisco?
Well, I think it's the first thing I thought was San Fran shitcoin. But why would it be them specifically doing it? Surely that would be done. I'm not really familiar with the whole infrastructure, but at the federal level, right? Because it must be $1. It's still $1, right? They're not going to create.
Well, remember that in the United States, the Federal Reserve is just about as federal as Federal Express. It's not really part of the government, so they can. But it is interesting to see the San Francisco and New York offices competing against each other. Are they both making CBDCs? Are they working together? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to hear the mechanics of that. The most interesting about that article was that I think I'm sure it said like 11 countries have already 11 countries have fully launched a CBDC, including the Bahamas and Nigeria. I had no idea. 11 countries have got a CBDC. But I'm assuming is it blockchain based? Is it like like JP Morgan's private ledger they were building, or is it like an actual public ledger? So that's quite interesting that there's already countries that have actually implemented it. And there hasn't been much talk about them as test cases and how it's going, right? You haven't seen any, or I haven't seen any articles of like, oh, Nigeria's CBDC has gone really bad or really well, whatever. Maybe I don't know. I'm going to read a lot more about that before next week. It seems like it's the way to go. The countries at the moment are still, especially the larger economies, are still very shady about Bitcoin. They're kind of I think they realize its power, and they need power to control, which Bitcoin doesn't give them. Bitcoin takes more power away from their own monetary system. So this all is about a power grab. And I'm with Josh, like the when it gets to a case of like being able to control going into a shop and being like, oh, Dan said something bad on Twitter, or it can go down to that level, and everything's going to be scrutinized even more so now than in the US. It's transactions over $600 now have to be declared. Was it something like that?
They've proposed things like that, but I'm not sure they've actually gone through.
Okay, cool.
It has been proposed.
It's been proposed, right? But you can tell with all these proposals that they're reaching out. I mean, even the EU dropped their limits on the amount that you can accept for cash before it needs to be formally declared. You could pay huge. You could buy a car with cash, like a brand new car with cash back in the day. And now, if you're accepting large sums of cash, it needs to be declared and AML and KYC'd and all that. So, it kind of only makes sense that with this crazy outreach, and especially kind of magnified by all the lockdown controls that they were able to do over the COVID, with COVID restrictions, that the power grab is here to stay, and it's not just it's not going to go away, and you need to fight for it. You need to fight for your freedom, because they're gonna take it.
But it's not even getting to the fight. It's not even being talked about. It's just in the newspaper. By next year we'll have a CBDC. It's not like, should we do this? What's the benefits? What's the the only benefit is apparently real-time settlement. Like, I give a crap if the shop down the road gets my money at the end of the day or the next day. Anyway, I mean, I've swiped my card. It doesn't matter. But also, where's the real bottleneck? Well, the real bottleneck's in international transfers. That's the one that takes a week. So, and that's not going to be solved unless you go, well, what's the natural progression? You go, the natural progression is real-time settlement on a country level. And then, well, we should do a full global currency, CBDC, through the International Bank of Settlements. And now we have a one world currency where one government basically controls what everyone does. And we have to do that because of, carbon emissions. And by the way, social credit score plugs perfectly into this as well. You're not allowed to spend more than this because XYZ. You're allowed a ration of chocolate this week because you used the green light and you didn't jaywalk. Like, I don't know how petty these people will get, but it's ridiculous to give them the power to be able to do it.
And once again, I'm agreeing with Josh. I went right there. The problem of how do you settle multiple CBDCs together? Global coin above all CBDCs. One
coin.
All. Yeah. One to bind them, one to find them, and in darkness bind them. As the article says, the posting says the team developing the CBDC has the feel of a startup. And you could make between $134,000 and $215,000 to sell out your fellow man and create a system that will track them forever. Ben, Ark, what do you think? It's got a feel of a startup. It's in San Francisco. Are you going to move? Are you going to take the job?
If you play out the game theory on it, I don't think we've got too much to be worried about ultimately, because all the countries are incentivized not to use another country's CBDC. So we don't want the US dollar CBDC to be the world reserve currency, and the way in which any world reserve currency has kept its power is through force and through control and coercion and hegemony. And ultimately, I think it just drifts to greater liberty, and the ultimate answer for countrywide settlement layer is Bitcoin. Just use Bitcoin and apolitical money. And plenty of economists, Keynes died for the cause, trying to push the Bancor during Bretton Woods. So I think that's where it will inevitably drift. And I think one of the ways in which we get there is let these big countries with their big salaries and the central banks and all this shit, let them build these gimmicks, right? But we empower the smaller countries. Okay, so we empower the smaller countries with the free and open source software stack to build their own free and open source CBDCs, whatever you want to call them, sovereign digital currencies, and you build it on something like Bitcoin. So build it on decent free and open source technology stack, and then it's just like software. You have proprietary software, you have free and open source software, and ultimately free and open source wins out because it's within everyone's interests for all web servers not to be controlled by Microsoft, to be controlled by a free and open source software package, or free and open source software packages. So I think Bitcoin will eventually win out, and I think the way we do that is as Bitcoiners, we admit that this attitude that we're like, oh well, all these poor countries should just use Bitcoin, and it's like, no, like they need something better. They need something which is stable. So we need to build a stable thing on Bitcoin for them to use, and then pour more people into Bitcoin. We need to empower them, get them using Bitcoin, something which is interoperable with Bitcoin, and then they'll start settling using Bitcoin. And then all these big, and then they won't want to use the USD CBDC. And the only way the USD could enforce that is through coercion and through force. And then everything will just drift towards using Bitcoin. So I think it's a very important step in Bitcoin's evolution. And I swear it's the thing which is going to cause the next crazy, like the amount of liquidity which would flood into Bitcoin because of it. It's the thing which would cause the next bull cycle, is when poorer countries, use the free and open source software stack to build really good, stable coins, just for stability, for day-to-day medium of exchange, and then if people want to use the savings technology of Bitcoin, they can just use it natively. Then when it pulls in the liquidity, eventually Bitcoin's this big behemoth and the price isn't going to move, and stuff is priced in Bitcoin, and then they could just use Bitcoin natively. Things which I'm more worried about is like backdoor CBDCs. So it's like Elon Musk with Twitter producing his own coin and creating a WeChat. And then, as a state puppet, that then becomes the backdoor CBDC, which people start using. But anyway, it's all temporary. Everything will drift towards using Bitcoin.
I think Ben's right here. I think he's predicting the future, that countries will use Bitcoin as a settlement layer, but only after they've wasted tons and tons of money and years of time all creating their own CBDCs and then all failing. It would be interesting, like Ben said, if the smaller countries, developing countries, whatever, work together, all started using Bitcoin, maybe could even get ahead of these first world or developed countries and beat them in the race. So that could be kind of an interesting opportunity there, as no doubt these countries have to go through this CBDC phase before they can even think about Bitcoin. They're like, just like Coinbase or Binance or anyone else, it's like, I'll just print my own coin. And it's government.
El Salvador didn't. They went straight. But yeah, and the other,
it doesn't work in El Salvador. Like, no one uses Bitcoin. The reason no one uses Bitcoin is because it sucks for like everyday payments. If they had the El Salvador dollar and Bitcoin, they would all use that, and it's because they love El Salvador, and they would use it as a stable medium of exchange. It's the thing which needs to happen, and just please happen.
Yeah. Well, this is why I'm so focused on building a stable coin, collateralized over collateralized. But yeah, sadly, it's not on Bitcoin. But that's because the tech stack isn't from, and liquidity. There's a whole bunch of reasons. But yeah, one really interesting point that you brought up was that it'll go through a system like in countries in Africa where the private sector actually created money using SMS credits, and then the government basically went and took that over and built a sort of CBDC by controlling that the telephone companies built. So yeah, that's also a really interesting take, Ben.
Exit question: how fast will this happen? Will the United States create a CBDC in 6 months, 2 years, 5 years? or never, Josh Shigala?
I don't think. I think it'll be probably 5 years. Yeah, and if they don't do it properly, because if they don't do it properly, the CBDCs and why they haven't been done yet is because they become a huge honeypot. You have one place where everybody's money is. If that gets hacked, the entire economy is dead in the water. You can't get it back. Who knows how much money did so-and-so have? I don't know. It got hacked. So it's not an easy nut to crack. And so, yeah, we'll see. I think 5 years. Yeah.
5 years. Dan, Eve, they say this team has the feel of a startup. How soon will they get their MVP to market?
Oh, I think that they'll probably get an MVP quite soon and be trialing it, but actually implementing it's a completely, a whole different ball game. And yeah, how is it going to work with like just one state doing it? I still don't understand that part, right? Because it's all the dollar. So how do you create a CBDC for just kind of part of the dollar? That bit confuses me. So yeah, I'm thinking donkey's years. I'm hoping Bitcoin before CBDC.
As everyone knows from Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1, startups are easy. Ben Ark, how quickly could they get this CBDC into the convenience stores and banks and malls and all the places it needs to be?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think that the speed of development will be much slower than. I just want it to happen in some poorer countries, and it's that bottom up anarchist revolution. It's kind of like, but by the smaller poorer countries. So it's almost like, if El Salvador adopted it, it would be a top down, but ultimately on the world stage, bottom up revolution. But yeah, I think that's likely to happen. Is they'll just create this amazing technology, and other countries will follow suit, and they'll fall like dominoes, and then these big countries will be like, oh, let's just use this great technology because it's better than anything we could create.
As Mark Zuckerberg said, move fast and break things. We can only assume the United States government will listen to his advice. We're running out of time. Josh Shigala, do you have a prediction or a story of the week?
Actually, a story of the week is that we finally, after months of R&D into different things, we are going to go with the zero knowledge rollups and developing on that stack for the standard. It will be on the Polygon's version of that and the Ethereum virtual machine, but it's zero knowledge EVM, which is really interesting tech. Yeah, and then still the hope is to bridge across to Bitcoin, to have wrapped Bitcoin being able to be used on that as well. So we'll see.
Well, I like roll-ups, but usually they're made of fruit. Dan, Eve, prediction or story of the week?
I'm going to go non-crypto here, but just a personal one, which is that today or yesterday, my son started, like, he's like 10 months old now, and I was like, clap, and did that, and he did clap. Now he did clapping on demand, and so that's just been all I can sort of think and smile about for the last couple of days. So yeah, bit of nice stuff rather than dreary FTX, Stan Bankman-Fried and his crinkly ass.
And his man boobs.
If only we could chain the audience to clap. We could save all the fairies. Ben Ark, prediction or story of the week. Go ahead.
I'm going to try and show you something, but I don't want to dox myself. So let me do a screen share. Oh, you disabled it. Is it enabled? Yay, go. Window or screen, entire screen.
While we're waiting for Ben, give us a thumbs up in the chat, folks. We're only 13.
Yeah, thumbs up, everybody. So I was playing around with a new extension we have, which is for pegged assets using Lightning. So Stable Sats, which is a great project. They've created an extension. And with that extension, you can connect to Collider, which is a exchange where you can do like high frequency trading in a fairly anonymous way. I don't understand the ins and outs of it because this stuff kind of really confuses me. But I'm going to show you an example. So I set up yesterday. I had 30,000 sats on in my wallet here, and then I had 30,000 sats on Collider, and I've actually got to log in to Collider to show you this. But it's kind of cool because look, for login, I'm going to use my LNURL auth on an LNbits wallet here. So I'm just going to, oh shoot, sorry, lame. Let me scan that again. There we go. So if you can, oh, you can't see it, can you? Because I'm screen sharing. But anyway, yeah. So now I'm logged in. I just scanned that QR code using LNURL auth. If I go to dashboard and then I go to overview, not overview. Is that overview? Oh man, this is it. Oh, profile. Oh, here we go. What's been happening is that using this extension, it's been hedging the price of Bitcoin, I guess. And then as Bitcoin drops in price, I've actually got some sats which have appeared in my Collider wallet, so I can just keep creaming that off. What it means is you can, in an anonymous way, if you're in Bitcoin in sats on Lightning, you can peg to, I think I'm pegged to USD currently, but you can also peg to euros as well. All this stuff's super interesting, and the experimentation which is happening with a project like Standard Sats and the Standard.io, and also Gallo with Stable Sats, which is a kind of fork of Standard Sats, is super exciting. And I just like the fact that this, there we go, you can see all these trades which have just been happening, doing crazy tradey stuff in order for me to keep a peg to USD. I just think it's really interesting and cool, even though I don't really understand how it's happening. But yeah, hopefully this extension will be launching it pretty soon. They're just going to like review it, and then people can play with it. But I think it's pretty powerful.
It's very cool. It's very, very cool. I love it. I mean, this is the way that for those that don't know, when we had local Bitcoins, and you would have these people running around town doing massive trades. And for instance, someone would say, oh, I need to sell 5 Bitcoin. Back in the day, maybe it was, I don't know, 20 grand. You would meet somewhere at a Starbucks, and they would give you 20 grand and you give them 5 Bitcoin, and they are already onto the next deal. Someone who wants to buy 5 Bitcoin, they would go over and sell that. Now, the thing that I always thought was, but what if Bitcoin just tanks in price while they're holding that, and then they go over and then they've lost money? First of all, they're making money on the spread, but second of all, they would, as soon as they bought that, they'd go into Kraken or something and they'd open a short position, and that means they borrow Bitcoin from somebody, and sorry, they'd sell it if they're holding Bitcoin here. So they do the opposite of what they do. So you're always doing the opposite on the exchange to what you've got. So if you're holding fiat, for that moment, and you're ready to buy Bitcoin because you've already made that deal, you can open a short position on Kraken. And if you take out all that complexity by using what Ben Arks here showed us, it's really wonderful, because now you can hold sats at a dollar value rather than at a Bitcoin value. And that's really useful for emerging economies that want to use Bitcoin as an international settlement layer. Amazing.
Very cool. Good stuff, Ben. Shout out.
Because I know so little. I'm gonna have to pick your brains about how it all works, the mechanics of the shorting stuff. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, shout out to Kenneth in the chat. He says he's looking for a good sci-fi book for this weekend. You can't go wrong with Foundation by Isaac Asimov, although that is part of a series. I'm not crazy about series sometimes because it's such a commitment. Also, I'd check out Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, or Fall, Doge in Hell by Neil Stephenson, or his latest Termination Shock, which is all about the future when global warming has taken hold and many places are now far too hot to live in. It's very good.
Did you say Doge in Hell?
I think it's Doge or maybe Dodge in Hell, but the main character's name is Dodge. It's a great book, Fall by Neil Stephenson.
There's nothing to do with Dogecoin.
Nothing at all, but it's a great book and everyone should check it out. It's very thoughtful. Yeah. Stephenson's a great writer, very accessible, very fun, with the exception of Cryptonomicon, which I haven't read. That one's hard, but read one of the easy ones like Snow Crash or Termination Stock or Fall. They're pretty long though. Snow Crash. But thanks again for everybody for joining us. Thanks for giving us a thumbs up down below, push and subscribe. Hello to everybody in the chat. Leave us a comment if you're watching later. And until next time, bye.
Bye.